everyone, welcome back to Immediate Movie Reactions. I'm here after seeing Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, not Dead Reckoning Part 2. I guess this is now Final Reckoning because 2 years later. So what is this film? I will start right off by saying I understand that Tom Cruise is kind of a Scientology nut job. He's a bit of a dick. I understand that. Still watch his films for some reason. I don't know why I do it to myself. Number two, this film is nothing but an ego trip. You know, we know what's going to happen. We know that this is Ethan Hunt. And again, he's the only one who can save the world. He's the only one that can save his people. He's the only one that can save his friends. And it's hard to ignore the allegory of him being the savior and having a main female character named Grace who he has to protect and ultimately is able to save us. And then the end of the film, when he ends up with the box that essentially has, I guess, a soul inside it that he can use to remake the world or whatever, even though no one else could be trusted with it, it's Ethan Hunt who can be trusted. And so I guess I need to go back a little bit. What is this film? It is the second part of the Reckoning series, and it is number 8 in a 30-year film series, ending Mission Impossible and ending Ethan Hunt. Probably, maybe, because obviously he can come back, even though I do hope, much like I would hope that Waller-Bridge is able to take over for Indiana Jones, I do hope Haley Atwell is able to take over for Ethan Hunt and Tom Cruise in this. I think she would be a good next step for this series if they do continue it. But I'm losing track of where I was. This film, do you need to see the first one? No. Do you need to see any of the other films? No, not really. Because what they do is every 5 to 6 minutes, they will rehash the plot. They will tell you, because they think we're idiots, exactly what is happening and why it's happening and what they're about to do next. And then after they've done it, they explain again why they did it. And the only time that's broken up is really by generating its own meme, because Tom Cruise runs freaking everywhere in this film. And then the extra long action pieces. I think in the first film, like I said, we rewatched it and skipped through a good portion of it, other than the train scene, because that's absolutely amazing. But I think in this one, so when you go on a roller coaster, right, it's so much excitement, so much fun, and you go up that first hill and you go down and you feel the thrill and you do your first loop and it's great. But the thing is, a roller coaster lasts for like a minute and a half and you do a couple loops and you feel good about it. With these films, unfortunately, it's loop after loop after loop, filled by long stretches of boring exposition that, again, is just continuing to repeat itself. So by the time you've gotten to that third or fourth or fifth loop, it doesn't really matter anymore because you don't have the same feeling. I don't think you really care so much. I do think that, 4.5 hours into this film, when they finally get to the sub, which is where they left the last movie, so weird the way this transitions. It's so strange. But by the time they get to that scene where he swims down, even though again they break all of their own rules, he swims down and he's in the sub and he's the only one who could possibly do this, even though there are clearly trained Navy officers who know the equipment and know whatever. He's the only one that can do it, right? That's a really cool sequence that again just goes on a little bit too long and ends in complete ridiculousness, where he absolutely should have died. They said, hey, if you don't breathe out, you will die. He doesn't breathe out, he dies, but then he doesn't die because the water's frozen, and we've all seen The Abyss, I guess, right? So we know that that's quote unquote possible. But most of what he does throughout the course of the film, it's really nonsensical, and it wouldn't work, right? In the end, it just wouldn't work. We have this nebulous AI enemy that doesn't really mean anything. And I know that that's the big thing. That's what we're all afraid of right now. China just launched a satellite into space and it's controlled by AI, and who knows what the hell is going on there. But they never bring anything real. Everybody has nuclear weapons for some reason. Every bomb that is going to be has to be diffused is a nuclear weapon. Oh, and by the way, Ving Rhames, Luther has cancer. That's just kind of thrown in there. So after Tom Cruise escapes being tortured by Gabriel, because he shows up every now and again just for some reason, there's also a cult. I don't know why they mention that there's a cult, but then they never do anything with it, dedicated to the entity. And so he escapes and then he runs across, Ethan Hunt, runs across Paris because that's how he's going to get across there quick enough to save Luther, which he doesn't. And He dies, surprise, sorry, spoiler alert, but what happens when he dies? We don't see this character who we've watched for 30 years actually go through the tragedy of death. No, instead we see Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise, running again. There's a point where he's running across, I guess, the Serengeti. They end up in this underground bunker because they just keep throwing things in there, which turns into again, another nuclear weapon, which turns into a car chase, which turns into a plane chase, which turns into climbing from plane to plane and punching people out like he's a 1940s PI. It doesn't make any sense. And I got so many negatives here. I think it just, the ancillary characters don't really matter. I think that this movie tries to be too serious. I think the editing continues to be weird. There are what should be two shots, with two characters speaking, but instead they're one shots, and they do this thing where it's like one shot, one person says a line, and then another person says the same conversation, but the next line is they're, again, expositing all of the information that we need again and again and again. I don't understand. But all of that being said, is this movie worth watching? I think it's a great summer blockbuster sort of movie. I think story-wise, this is right there at like a 4 or 5. It's pretty weak. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I really don't care about any of the characters at this point, even though I said I do think Haley Atwell could be the next leader of the IMF. I think that would be super cool. But as far as the spectacle of the film, like I said, I think that plane sequence is really, really cool on its own. I think that the submarine is that's absolutely amazing. But there's so much shit that happens early in this film. 30 to 45 minutes of just rehashing and reconnecting old movies and doing all sorts of weird stuff that we don't need. And so for that, you kind of get lost. But I think having just seen the Final Reckoning Part 1, or Dead Reckoning Part 1, at home and just not feeling the same impact, I would say this is a movie that is better seen in the theater, and the bigger the possible. We saw the first one in 40X. This we saw in just standard, but it probably would have been better in an IMAX or something, because you're not going for the story. You're not going for the characters. You're going for just the ridiculous stunts. And for that, it does pull it off. I'm going to give this movie overall a 7, which feels like a really high score, but I'm only saying that because I do think that this is a good popcorn theater movie. So anyways, there we are. Please let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you all after the next movie.